My name is Eric Turnman. I've been the superintendent of the Harrisburg School District now for 5 months and some change. So I probably had my eyes on Harrisburg probably about 2 or 3 years ago, in terms of, if it would be something I'd be interested in moving forward with, because I was leaving a community that I loved and I enjoyed. And we had a very good synergy between me and the Reading School District, and especially the high school that I left. So in March, when the position became available, was at that point in time, I decided to take a leap of faith and put in to be the superintendent of the Harrisburg School District. And 3 months later, I was appointed by Dr. Samuels to lead the charge and to continue the progress that Dr. Samuels and the MCIU group had already started probably about 2 years ago. So it has been very much a challenge, having this be your first superintendent job and rolling into a year where kids haven't been in school for a year and a half and dealing with a pandemic. And that has, in and of itself, been a challenge each and every day for students, for staff, and then also for the community as well. But we are doing the best to put our best foot forward and to get to a point where we can try to get back to a sense of normalcy. I think the one thing in education right now that everyone is feeling when it comes to the job market is that there's not one sector that has not been affected by COVID. And as a district, in terms of staffing and moving forward, that has been, a challenge for us. How do you retain staff when you see staff across the country who are leaving the field of education and going into other fields? So that's been a challenge, and one that we are trying to develop plans in place to be able to try to move our district forward, because the kids in Harrisburg deserve the best. And that has been a common theme that as I go about these listening tours and get a chance to sit down with folks, is everyone has this feeling that the kids in Harrisburg deserve better and deserve the best. And it's my job as a superintendent to figure out how I bring the best out in everyone in order for us to move the district forward. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be part of the district, and I'm very happy to be the superintendent. And before I sort of jump into a presentation, and it's just the goal of the presentation, and this is probably, and the unfortunate part, Chris has probably sat through 2 of these, so he could probably do this for me if he wanted to. But the goal of the presentation is to let everybody in the community know a potential vision of the Harrisburg school system. So we had an opportunity to share this with local leadership. We've had an opportunity to share this with HEA. And after today, tomorrow, I'm actually going to do a Facebook Live video at 5 o'clock, and we're going to put it out to the entire community. Because one thing that we want to do is to be fully transparent in terms of what the vision is and where we're looking to go. And so that's one of the things coming in is, how do we become more transparent? How do we ensure that everyone knows what it is and where we're actually going to go? And then how do we have everyone have sort of some buy-in, and then also on top of that, some input in terms of, hey, you know what, here's what we want as well to turn the district and move the district forward. So I was given a charge probably about 3 months ago. There's a lot of, it's called ESSER funding. So this funding has gone to majority of the districts within the Commonwealth and across the country. And the Harrisburg school system is fortunate enough that we have a substantial amount of money that we can do some creative things in terms of how the district could look and feel differently down the road. So took some time to reflect and talking to people and looking at data. And the presentation I'm getting ready to show you is kind of what we came up with after probably 3 months on the job. Wow, that's neat. Never seen that before, where I can actually be part of it. So it did throw me off for a second. Who's that? I honestly didn't know who that guy was up there. So I do apologize. So, we did call this plan the Reshaping the Lives of Harrisburg Students. So how do we prevent, prepare, and respond? Next slide, fair enough. All right, so some of the effects of COVID, you'll see in 1920, that's when all districts in March were shut down, and basically they told students to go home. The Harrisburg School District last school year was the remote for almost the entire year. They ended up bringing some kindergarten to second grade students in for the last 2 months of school, but for the most part across the board, kids were not in brick and mortar for almost a year and a half. You fast forward to this year, and now we are bringing 7,000 kids back to school. And that has been a little bit of a challenge with students being out of school for so long and then integrating them back into going to school each and every day. So what has that impact had on the Harrisburg School District? The achievement gap, which I'll talk to you about a little bit later on, has widened. You definitely see more mental, social, and emotional issues and concerns throughout not just the students, but throughout the community. You still have your health and safety concerns in terms of COVID and the spread of COVID throughout the city of Harrisburg, and then also in your schools. You can definitely tell that there's been a strain on family supports. And in the last part here is definitely financial instability. So these are some of the impacts that COVID has had on the Harrisburg community. The biggest impact that we'll talk about is the impact on our youngest scholars. So I'm going to draw your attention to the kindergarten data. Now this is 2019 compared to 2021. And 2019, coming in, 36% of the students were significantly below level. Fast forward 2 years later, that has now jumped to 58%. You look at reading, 61% 2019, significantly below level coming into as a kindergartner. You fast forward 2 years later, we're at almost 80% of our youngest scholars who are significantly below level at the age of 5 or 6. So how are we going to respond to that? The first one is to reopen Steele Elementary School. So in terms of the opportunity to spread students out, to get better class size, to also look at more of that neighborhood, of opening up that neighborhood school for that community as well. We're looking to take substantial money and reopen Steele Elementary School. The next one is to open up Cougar Academy, which is the linking building, and open it up a little bit more. So right now, central office shares that location with students, and there are probably anywhere up to close to 30 students in a classroom at that location. So if central office relocates and we go to a different location, that would open up roughly 16 classrooms, where at that point in time, what we could do is, once again, spread students out. And at that point in time, also begin to open up a kindergarten site there and aggressively go after pre-K, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So doing Steele and Lincoln, the impact is pre-K. So right now we have 2 pre-K classrooms. The goal for us is open up a pre-K classroom in every school. Also give us an opportunity to work with all of the partners within the Harrisburg community in terms of any daycares, and really being able to look at students, and we're calling it birth to kindergarten. So how do we help support families? How do we help support those youngest students who we need to be a lot better, more prepared when they come into our kindergarten classroom? Next one will be an impact on K-4 class size and a reduction of that. And the next one, which is going to be a transition, is potentially bringing 5th grade out of the middle school back to elementary school. Right now you have 10 and 11-year-old students who are in the middle school, and it was very quick for me in getting out to our middle schools to see that probably is something that we need to rethink moving forward. So if you strengthen 5th grade, what does that do? Well, from a curriculum standpoint in the district, we're already K-5. So you bring 5th grade back, it makes sense for them to be elementary. 5th grade kids, I was a 5th grade teacher, they need structure. Them being in an unstructured environment that has that middle school feel, probably not the wisest thing. Bringing them into a more positive environment where they're honestly, 5th grade kids are still little kids. All right. And that's just very clear to me, once again, from my own experience. And when you see what's happening in the schools and in relationships, your fifth grade kids really still want those day-to-day relationships that they have with their classroom teacher. When you get in the middle school, you now have 4 teachers, 5 teachers, and so forth. Our fifth grade kids now would have 1 to 2 teachers that they would really be able to establish a relationship with day in and day out. So there's going to be 2 conversations here. One is going to be achievement. The other one's going to be growth. Achievement means here's the bar. You have to get kids to reach the bar. So if the bar is 80%, that's where you want kids to go. Growth is something a little bit different. Growth is saying, well, here's where we're saying a kid should be at. And did you get to kids to that point? Okay. So we have two data sets that we're going to look at as we move forward. So here's fifth grade. So if you look at kids in fourth grade and you look at kids in fifth grade and look at their daily attendance and how much it switches in 1 year. Fourth grade kids, their daily attendance is 89%. A fifth grade student is 84. And that's only 1 year difference. When you look at fourth graders in terms of suspensions, there was only 2. When you jumped up to fifth grade, it's 21. When you look at data in terms of cohort data, when you follow the same group of kids from 1 year to the next, when that same group of kids, 15, 16, was in fourth grade, their growth, they exceeded it. The next year in fifth grade, they dropped to a point where they did not, just by changing their grade. And you'll see that theme go through all 3 years. So for the most part in our district, when they're in fourth grade, they're achieving and having enough growth to move forward. When they go to fifth grade the following year, that growth ends up declining and decreasing with the same group of kids from 1 year to the next. That's elementary school. Now we're going to kind of shift to middle school. So you have Camp Curtin, you have Roland Academy, you have Marshall Math Science, and then you also have William Penn, which we're going to have some discussion on next. So the middle school concept would be grades 6 to 8. At this point in time, what we were looking to do is we would have 4 middle schools and not 3. With the 4 middle schools, what we're doing now is when you look at the Harrisburg school system, and when you think about the kids, like the kids in Roland, there's conflict within their own neighborhood. There's conflict within Camp Curtin. Okay, it's not like they're going against each other within their own neighborhood. So how do we give kids an opportunity for the student and the parent to have choice in terms of what they want to pursue, for it to be relevant for them to have a sense of belonging? What are the 21st century skills that are needed for them to be successful, and it has some rigor that's attached to that for that student to be able to move forward? So that would mean we would look at recapturing William Penn and bring William Penn back online in order for it to be a magnet middle school within the next 3 years. Now, here's if you've never been to William Penn. I'm sure you have. All right. The building in of itself is absolutely gorgeous, probably 15, 20 years ago. Okay. It is a shell of that now. The one thing about William Penn, what this allows us to do, there's so many acreages on that property that it gives us an opportunity that if we want to do something later on, we'll be able to do so. That's probably the only place where you have enough land to be able to add. You could add another high school as an example. You could add anything you wanted to with the amount of land you have at William Penn. So the goal right now is to take William Penn and be able to say that would be our 4th middle school. So within that concept, now you would have kids who have 4 different choices about where they want to attend. And let me tell you the one thing I've learned over the past 5 months in sitting down and talking to students, and you kind of go to each building and you're talking to kids, the sense of hope that kids have going to Marshall Math Science Academy is totally different than the sense of hope kids have from going to Roland and Camp Curtin. So if you sit down and talk to students and talk about hope and dreams, it is totally different when you go from one school to the next. So how do you take a concept and say, no matter who the kid is, no matter what middle school they go to, there's a sense of hope of what I can do with my life in the future. And that's what the goal of really going after kids in Harrisburg at this age is moving forward. So you start to look at your middle school data, and you'll start to see trends from fourth grade going all the way down to eighth grade when it comes to attendance, when it comes to where the students at benchmark for reading, for math, and the number of students that have been suspended. You can very easily see a trend that this is where we start to lose kids in the Harrisburg school system, right at the middle school level. And your data supports that. That's when they start to go in different directions. And then sometimes they've now gone in the direction where at the age of 15 or 16, it's very difficult to bring them back. So we have to aggressively go after kids the minute they hit middle school to engage them in something that is going to show them hope, to engage them in something that's going to let them see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Now we're going to shift to high school. High school, you have John Harris, Cougar Academy, and Sci Tech. So if you start to look at the graduation rate, there has definitely been some improvement in John Harris over the last 5 years, going from 49% to 65. Dropout rate has been kind of flat other than the 18 and the 19 school year. All right, so that's kind of been up and down. So that's your John Harris, Cougar Academy, and Sci Tech, but that data there is specifically for John Harris. So how do you take the momentum of kids going to a magnet school, getting engaged and excited about something, and now they go to high school? Same thing goes with the conversation when you sit down and you talk to kids about where they go to school. There's a different feel for what kids feel in terms of their future at Sci Tech compared to John Harris. It's night and day, and this is just talking to students. So how do we create that same feel for when kids are at John Harris? So college and career readiness and your career academies. We already have one. Sci Tech would be a career academy. We would need to create 3 others within the school. So at that point in time, in the 9th grade student, you'd be able to explore careers in terms of what I want to pursue. Then you start to get up to the experience, job shadowing, and then also post-secondary for every student. Then you get to a point when kids get to 12th grade. How do we get kids involved in dual enrollment, internships, and co-op? You really want students at that point in time to get the experience. What is it like being on a college campus? What is it like now if I want to be an attorney or I want to be in the healthcare field? What is it like now for me to be able to get a co-op opportunity or an internship so I now have the experience of what that career is? So you have K, pre-K, all the way up to 12. Now let's tackle the community and what their needs are. We are in the process of having discussion about purchasing the building on Paxton Street, okay? I believe it's the Business Weekly or Business Journal, one of the two, Business Weekly. And we are in discussion of purchasing that building, all right? So what would this do for us is, as a district, here's where we would be able to take central office out and go to this location. A resource center. Number one, how do we welcome families to Harrisburg? Okay, it's an urban environment. You're going to have in and out. So when families relocate to Harrisburg, how do we help support them and understand how they can navigate the city? Where are the resources located? How do you support them with when it comes to the employment? How do you support them when maybe it comes to now we're talking about housing? How do you support families when they get here to make sure they're successful and they get off the ground running? 2, we would move district office there, where all of our supports would be at one location. That would be myself, and everyone in central office is located on the same floor to be able to support families with whatever their needs are. And then a resource center. The resource center would be, instead of it being fragmented in one resource is here, the other resource is over there, this resource is back here, we bring it all on one floor, under one roof, in the same location. So if I'm a family and I know I need support here, I know I can go to that building and they're going to help support me. I don't have to run around and try and figure it out. So that's a 3-pronged approach in terms of how we would really be able to help our city and our residents move forward. The other part that has become problematic within both entities, we're talking students, we're even talking staff and the community as well, is the social emotional learning piece, right? So how do we focus on self-awareness? How do we support relationship skills, self-management, social awareness, and responsible decision-making, okay? So we're gonna move forward with helping our community and also our students with this as well. So within an MTSS framework, you have a tiered level of supports. All right, so you have tier 1 is what you can do to help support all. Then as things start to escalate, you now have to then be a little bit more intensive with your support with kids. So tier 1 moving forward with a group called Effective School Solutions, as they are going to come in and they are going to support students. They're going to come and support parents and faculty with what tier 1 interventions they can use to be able to support their child or their student. We're then going to aggressively go after students who are really struggling day in and day out, to the point where we're going to put 2 clinicians at John Harris, 1 at each of the middle schools. What that's going to do is this clinician will really be able to focus on the emotional and social well-being of the students that are under their charge. So we can definitely get those students back on track, because what I'll tell you is suspending kids for incidents and things that they're going on to school is not an intervention that works to turn that child around. All you're doing is excluding them from school. You're putting them back out on the street. And the long and the short of it is, as you keep continuing to do that, that student eventually is going to drop out of school. So how do we provide a support that's really going to aggressively go after the students who are really struggling right now? So what's our timeline? So the goal is by next week, we are going to apply for our ESSER 3 grant. What that means is we would be looking at putting in the William Penn project and also Steele. We're actually working on is 5th grade, can they go back to elementary school next year? And we're kind of working on that now. All right, then being able to select the magnet school concept and what the focus would be. For example, with all the land you have at William Penn, you can do an environmental magnet school out there where it would be very hands-on, and you could really get nuts with what that could look like. So how do we start having that conversation about what those 4 focuses would be? And then also prepare for construction. So now you get approved. Now we have to prepare for construction. And right now, finding folks who are really ready to jump into projects is not that easy, which is why we're trying to make this happen quickly to get in front of all the districts who are putting in to do these construction projects. Following school year. So that's all right, you can stay there. There's a timeline for each year in terms of what we're going to accomplish next year, the following year, and the year after that, okay? So there's specific tasks that we're looking at doing each and every year. So your total ESSER funding that the district received was $83 million. You have to take that pot of money, and at the end of 2023, 2024, you have to make sure that you can step back and say, we have done something very aggressive, because we will never see that type of money again, okay? Never. So how do you aggressively say we are going to go after something that is going to definitely have an impact on students and the community as a whole? So kind of bringing it back, kind of full circle, you know, the achievement gap is widened. There are the different pieces under there in terms of how they fit in. Mental health, social emotional, how everything kind of fits into that category. Health and safety concerns, how parts fit in there. Strain on family supports, how it fits in there. Financial instability, how it would fit in. So the entire plan had to fit into those 5 buckets, okay? And that was the goal when it was completed. So we are now gathering feedback from all our stakeholder groups. We're going to sit back, analyze the results. We are going to share that out. Then at that point in time, we are going to move forward. So that's what we're looking to do in Harrisburg. It is going to be if we get approved for these projects, it is going to be a very crazy ride over the next 2 years, because how this funding works is we have to make sure everything is spent before October 2024. So basically everything needs to be completed by August of 2024, because obviously you're not going to want to do any projects while kids are in school. So once we're on the clock, we really have 2.5 years really to get it done. So that's why we are aggressively going to make sure we get the application in. Once we have approval, it's time to move forward. So my goal for all of you is to come back and kind of report, say, here's where we're at. I want to be very transparent. Here's where we're at. But then also, when I ask for the need and what we need, you specifically know what we're going after. Okay? I appreciate your time and look forward to working with you and partnering with me moving forward.